He rose from Harlem's chaos to become hip-hop royalty, but every empire has its ghosts. The lights flicker, the beat fades, and for a brief second, silence. Then, the sound of rain against pavement. Harlem, 1970s. A city choking under the weight of poverty and power, where opportunity had a price and survival was a skill. In a small apartment tucked between cracked brick walls and street lamps buzzing with static, a boy named Sean Combs watched his world crumble before it began. His father, Melvin Combs, a street figure tangled in Harlem's underbelly, was gunned down when Sean was just 3 years old. The official story said a car accident, but the whispers in the neighborhood told a different tale, a deal gone wrong. The boy's first lesson came early. Power never comes without blood. His mother, Janice, did what any mother would. She ran. She pulled her son from the streets of Harlem and replanted him in the suburbs of Mount Vernon, hoping to outrun the ghost that had already marked them. But Harlem never really leaves its children. It follows, hides, waits. In Mount Vernon, Sean became something else, sharper, smoother, hungrier. He was the kind of kid who could sell rain in a thunderstorm. Teachers saw a leader. Friends saw a hustler. Everyone saw potential. But behind his smile was the quiet obsession of someone who'd already lost too much to be ordinary. By the time he reached Howard University, Sean wasn't just another college student. He was an architect of ambition. He threw the best parties, turned basements into ballrooms, and built networks like blueprints for his future. People didn't just follow him, they believed in him. He understood power before he ever touched it. And then, opportunity called. In the form of Andre Harrell, the charismatic mogul behind Uptown Records. Andre was everything Sean wanted to be. Respected, powerful, feared. He was the man who turned the streets into gold records. When the two met through Heavy D, a family friend and rising rapper, there was an instant connection. Or perhaps something deeper. Andre saw something in Sean, something rare. A reflection of himself. Or maybe a spark he could mold. Within weeks, the young intern from Howard was given keys to the kingdom, the studio, the office, the late-night meetings where careers were made or destroyed. But for all his charm, something about the arrangement didn't sit right. Industry insiders whispered about the bond between Andre and his new protege. It wasn't just mentorship, it was favoritism. How did a 19-year-old intern become indispensable overnight? How did he gain access that even senior executives couldn't dream of? People in Uptown's corridors talked, quietly, cautiously. Some said Andre saw in him the next big thing. Others said it was something else. And then came the name Clive Davis, the godfather of the music business. A man whose influence stretched from pop to politics and whose presence seemed to hover over every decision Uptown made. Clive had once discovered Andre the same way Andre discovered Sean. The pattern was clear, eerie even, a chain of protégés bound by ambition and whispers. Clive, the legendary label head, Andre, his chosen successor, and now, Sean, the hungry intern with eyes too sharp for his age. Each generation, the same story repeated, power exchanged in private rooms, loyalty traded for legacy. And in the center of it all, a young man who learned that in this world, talent opened doors, but obedience kept them open. Sean dropped out of Howard to take a full-time job under Andre. That's when the legend of Puffy began, the tireless workhorse who slept on couches, lived in studios, and hustled harder than anyone. But for every handshake and deal, there was always that shadow, the sense that he was being watched, tested, shaped into something greater and darker. Within months, he wasn't just an assistant. He was running the show. At 20 years old, Sean Combs became vice president of Uptown Records. No one had ever climbed that fast. No one. To outsiders, it looked like genius. To insiders, it looked impossible. One night, during a private dinner in Manhattan, an executive asked Andre how his kid had earned so much power so quickly. Andre just smiled and said, "When you see a star, you don't wait for him to rise. You throw him into the sky." But what happens when the same hands that lift you can also pull the strings? Sean's rise brought him close to everyone, Heavy D, Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, a new generation of artists who shaped 90s R&B. But it also brought him close to the unspoken secrets of Uptown, the favors owed, the debts hidden, the deals that could never reach daylight. Kim Porter, Andre's assistant at the time, was one of the few who saw it all. She reportedly caught glimpses of Sean in compromising moments, situations that suggested power was being traded for progress. Whether the rumors were true or not didn't matter. They stuck. And in the entertainment world, rumors are currency. As Sean's reputation grew, so did the tension. He was the golden boy, ambitious, magnetic, dangerous. The artists loved him. The executives feared him. Andre couldn't contain him anymore. The apprentice had become the master. Then, as fast as it all began, it ended. Uptown's parent company clashed with Puff over creative control. The fights grew loud, public. By the end of 1992, Andre was forced to make a choice: protect the label or protect the boy he built. He fired Sean. It should have been the end of the story. But power never lets go easily. Within weeks, Sean resurfaced, not as a fallen star, but as a king with his own throne. Backed by Clive Davis, he launched Bad Boy Records. The rumors came back full circle. Had Clive replaced Andre with his own new favorite? Had Puff simply stepped into the same cycle that once gave him power? In the streets, they said he was blessed. In the boardrooms, they said he was chosen. But behind the cameras and the platinum records, there was always that whisper. He didn't just rise. He was lifted by something unseen. And as the lights fade and the montage returns, red carpets, awards, flashing bulbs, the voice returns, colder this time. Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this video. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. Now back to the story. The year was 1993. Sean Puffy Combs, the boy once fired from Uptown, walked back into the same industry that shut its doors on him. But this time, he didn't come knocking. He came kicking. With a handshake and a contract from Clive Davis, Diddy founded Bad Boy Records, a name that would soon define a generation and haunt it just the same. The ink was barely dry when the machine roared to life. Craig Mack was the first soldier drafted into Diddy's vision, a rapper from Long Island with a rugged voice and loyal heart. His single, Flavor in Your Ear, wasn't just a hit, it was a declaration of war. A new sound was here, slick, loud, polished, and unapologetically New York. Diddy wasn't following the trends, he was writing them. And then came the discovery that would immortalize him. From the underground streets of Brooklyn, Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G., a heavy-set kid with razor-sharp wordplay and a storyteller's soul. Diddy didn't just sign him, he anointed him. Within months, Bad Boy Records was untouchable. Their sound dominated radio, their videos painted wealth as a religion, and their parties turned music into mythology. Puffy had built not just a label but a lifestyle. Flashy suits, glossy magazines, Bentleys, champagne towers, silk Versace shirts. Every image screamed power. Every beat promised immortality. And at the center of it all stood Diddy, the self-made mogul, the preacher of hustle, the prince of the New World Order. But beneath the neon glow, something darker pulsed. Inside Bad Boy's studio walls, control was law. Nothing moved without Diddy's approval. Every track, every lyric, every look had to pass his inspection. He wasn't just a producer, he was a puppeteer. Artists praised him in public, feared him in private. He rewarded loyalty, but demanded obedience. If you challenged him, you were erased. If you hesitated, you were forgotten. The first to learn this the hard way was the man who helped him build it, Craig Mack. After Flavor in Your Ear made him a star, Craig was ready to release his next project. He had vision, songs, momentum, but one problem. His manager wasn't part of Bad Boy.
Diddy didn't like that.
Not one bit. In a meeting thick with cigar smoke and tension, he gave Craig an ultimatum. Fire your manager, or your career dies here. Craig hesitated. His manager had been with him from day one, through rejection and struggle. Loyalty wasn't something he could sell. So he said no. That's when the machine turned. His calls stopped getting returned. His studio time vanished. His album shelved. And in interviews, Diddy still smiled for the cameras, claiming Craig's new record was coming soon. But behind that grin, the decision was already made. Craig Mack's career was over. Not by failure, but by design. People close to the label began to notice a pattern. One moment you were family, the next you were forgotten. It wasn't just business. It was psychological warfare. Puffy was rewriting the rules of loyalty. You were either under him or against him. Even as Craig faded, the machine found a new engine, Biggie. With Ready to Die, the label hit full throttle. Critics called it raw, cinematic, prophetic. It was everything hip-hop needed, and everything Diddy wanted. The money rolled in. Awards followed. And suddenly, Puff wasn't just a producer. He was a mogul. Bad boy for life wasn't a slogan anymore. It was a commandment. But the higher he climbed, the colder the air got. Fame brought paranoia. The label was growing too fast, the streets were watching too closely, and Puffy's inner circle was shrinking by the week. Old friends drifted, new enemies surfaced, and trust became the rarest currency in his world. The industry praised him as a genius, but the people closest whispered another word: manipulator. He threw lavish parties that doubled as tests of loyalty. He'd watch who approached, who whispered, who stayed close, who tried to leave. Artists didn't know if they were performing for the crowd or auditioning for his approval. Behind every smiling photo, there was someone missing, another name that quietly disappeared from the label roster. At first, it was just business fallouts. Then, it became something heavier. Rumors of accidents, fights, unexplained silences. The kind of stories no one wanted to repeat on record. Diddy's empire was thriving, but its foundation was built on fear. Meanwhile, Craig Mack was gone, living quietly, his fire dimmed but his conscience intact. Years later, he would reveal how deeply the betrayal had cut him. I was his first artist. I helped him build everything. But when I wouldn't bow, he erased me. And that was the warning shot. For those who came next, for Biggie, Faith, Maze, and others, the message was clear: obey the king or lose the crown. The empire glistened in gold, but its corridors were haunted. Because while the music played, people began to wonder how much of that brilliance came from inspiration and how much from control. Bad Boy Records wasn't just a label, it was a fortress. Inside, dreams were made. Outside, graves were dug. As Diddy stood atop the world, cameras flashing, champagne spilling, crowds chanting his name, there was a stillness in his eyes that didn't match the celebration. He had won. He had power. But even kings know, every empire casts a shadow. The year was 1994, and hip-hop was no longer a sound. It was a battlefield. On one coast, Bad Boy Records ruled New York. On the other, death row reigned supreme in California. Two empires, two kings, Puff Daddy and Suge Knight, each convinced the throne belonged to them. At first, the rivalry was just music, a war of words, of beats, of billboard positions. But as fame grew, pride followed, and pride in hip-hop is gasoline. All it takes is one spark. That spark came on a cold November night in Manhattan. Tupac Shakur, rapper, actor, poet, revolutionary, had come to New York to record a verse for a bad boy producer named Ron G. The plan was simple: drop the verse, collect his $7,000 payment, and head home. But simplicity doesn't last long in the shadow of money and fame. As Tupac entered the Quad Recording Studio's lobby, two men in army jackets stepped out of the shadows. In seconds, 5 shots rang out. The air filled with the stench of gunpowder and blood. Pac hit the floor, clutching his chest, screaming. The assailants vanished into the city fog. When security rushed in, they found Tupac gasping for air, but still alive. As he was carried out on a stretcher, he looked up and saw familiar faces staring down from the stairwell: Puffy, Biggie, and others from Bad Boy's inner circle. The eyes that once welcomed him now looked down, silent, cold. From that moment on, The line between friendship and warfare disappeared. In the hospital, Tupac's rage boiled over. He claimed Bad Boy set him up, that Puffy wanted him out of the way, that jealousy had turned business into bloodshed. Whether true or not, the accusation lit the match. Puffy denied everything. He appeared on camera calm, collected, and shaking his head. "That's crazy," he said. "We'd never do something like that." But his eyes told another story, restless, darting, almost trembling. And while Pac recovered from his wounds, rumors became gospel. Streets began to whisper, "Bad Boy can't be trusted." When Pac was released from prison a year later, he didn't come out humbled. He came out furious. In California, Suge Knight opened his arms, promising revenge and a record deal. With Death Row's muscle and Tupac's fury, the West Coast now had a weapon the East couldn't ignore. The microphones became machine guns. Bad Boy dropped "Who Shot Ya?", a song Biggie claimed was recorded months before the shooting, but the timing felt too sharp, too deliberate. Tupac fired back with "Hit 'em Up," spitting venom into the mic. "That's why I fed your BH, you fat motherf******. The line ripped through hip-hop like a bullet through glass. This was no longer music, it was war poetry written in blood and pride. Every award show became a standoff. Every after-party, a battlefield waiting to ignite. When Suge Knight took the stage at the 1995 Source Awards and sneered, "Any artist out there who doesn't want the executive producer all in the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to Death Row." The crowd erupted, half cheers, half boos. Puffy forced a smile, but in his chest, he felt the crown shake. That night marked the official split. East versus West wasn't a rivalry anymore, it was blood sport. Fast forward to September 7, 1996. Las Vegas glowed like a kingdom built on sin. Mike Tyson was fighting Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand, and every celebrity from both coasts was in attendance, including Tupac, Suge Knight, and members of Death Row. The cameras caught Pac smiling, flashing his gold chain, alive with energy. No one knew it would be the last time they'd ever see that smile. After the fight, in the MGM lobby, Tupac spotted a man, Orlando Anderson, a known associate of the Crips, rumored to have ties to Puffy's side of the map. Words turned to fists. Tupac swung first. Security footage captured the brawl, the chaos, the sound of Suge shouting in the background. That single punch would rewrite history. Hours later, as the night cooled, Tupac and Suge climbed into a black BMW, heading down Las Vegas Boulevard. The lights reflected off the chrome, off the diamond cross at Pac's neck. At 11:14 p.m., a white Cadillac pulled alongside them at a red light. The window rolled down. Gunfire exploded into the desert air, 14 shots in under 10 seconds. Pac slumped over, his blood staining the leather seats. Suge sped off, tires screaming, but the damage was done. 6 days later, Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. Age 25. Body number 1. The first ghost of the empire. Weeks after the killing, a new story began to surface, one darker than anyone expected. A Southside Compton Crip named Keef, declaimed Puffy, had offered him $1 million to take care of Suge Knight and Tupac. According to Keef, the money came through intermediaries, men who moved in silence, men Puffy could trust. No one could prove it, but the story spread like wildfire. Every radio DJ, every studio whisper, every journalist in the underground knew the tale. The East paid to silence the West. Whether true or not, the rumor poisoned everything. Puffy went on television to deny it, his voice calm, his words careful. "We don't entertain nonsense," he said. But behind the polished grin, fear was growing. Because even lies, when repeated enough, begin to sound like truth. And truth, in this world, can kill you. The body count had begun, and the line between revenge and survival was gone. Fans wept, artists armed themselves, and the industry turned its eyes away. What had started as a feud between labels was now a storm swallowing everyone inside it. Somewhere in Manhattan, Diddy poured another glass of champagne, raising it to the night sky, celebration or guilt. No one could tell. Across the country, Suge Knight plotted from behind his red walls of power. The war wasn't over. It was only changing shape. Because in this story, every victory demands a sacrifice. And the question that haunted everyone who survived was simple. Every empire demands sacrifice, but who chooses who dies? It was March 9th, 1997. Los Angeles, the city of angels and the graveyard of rap. 6 months had passed since Tupac's death, but the smoke from that war still hung in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Bad Boy Records was back on top. Their albums sold millions, their videos lit up MTV, and Puffy danced like a man untouchable. But for Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G., peace never returned. He had watched his friend-turned-rival fall. He had seen the hate letters, the headlines, the death threats. Everywhere he went, he carried the shadow of Tupac with him. Every stage, every crowd, every lyric felt like walking through crossfire. And now, with Tupac gone, everyone wanted to know, who would be next? I just want to make music, man. All that beefin', it's over. I got love for everybody. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. Behind the jokes, there was fatigue. Fear. Friends say he started moving differently, checking hotel windows twice, switching cars mid-ride. He knew something was coming, he just didn't know from where. And the people closest to him, they saw the signs too. In early 1997, Diddy announced that Bad Boy would attend the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles. It was supposed to be a victory lap, a celebration of success after surviving the East versus West blood feud. But for Biggie, California was a land of ghosts. He didn't want to go. His leg was still healing from a car accident. He couldn't even walk properly. More than that, he felt something, that heavy, unshakable feeling that the air was wrong. He told Diddy he was sitting this one out. But Puff, ever the showman, wouldn't hear it. You gotta come, Big. This is family. This is Bad Boy. Family. That word again. Maze, one of Bad Boy's rising stars, called Biggie days before the trip. He'd heard whispers, rumors from LA gangs that people were looking for Puffy and Big. He told Biggie to be careful, to skip the party. Big laughed it off. Maybe because he trusted Puff. Maybe because he thought he couldn't escape destiny. Then came the second warning, from Diddy's own bodyguard, Gene Deal. He told Puffy straight up, "We shouldn't go to that after party. I'm hearing things. People are plotting." But Puffy waved him off. "I don't want to hear that. If you're scared, stay behind." And so, they went. The Vibe magazine after-party was in full swing. The energy was high, the champagne endless. Diddy, Biggie, Faith Evans all there. Cameras everywhere. But beneath the laughter, unease crept through the crowd like smoke. Security was thin. Gang members mingled with producers. Strangers slipped through the door. By 12:30 a.m., police arrived to shut it down. Too crowded, too chaotic. Puffy gathered the crew. Biggie, his cousin Lil Cease, and his driver got into a black GMC Suburban. Puffy climbed into another vehicle ahead. They pulled onto Fairfax Avenue, headlights gliding through the night. Biggie leaned back, smiling, talking about his upcoming trip to London. He had an interview lined up, his chance to rebuild his image, to move beyond the feud. He was ready to start over. Then the red light stopped them. A Chevy Impala rolled up beside them. Tinted windows. No plates. The driver turned his head, one slow, deliberate motion. Then came the flash. 4 bullets tore through the door. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the car. Biggie slumped forward, silent. By the time they reached Cedars-Sinai Hospital, he was gone. 24 years old. The world stopped. Fans gathered outside Bad Boy headquarters in tears, candles burning on the pavement. News anchors struggled to say the words aloud. Another legend dead, another family mourning, another mystery born. Diddy gave interviews, his voice trembling with practiced grief. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. "I lost my brother." But some people noticed something strange. 2 hours after Biggie's death, Diddy was gone. A private jet, San Diego bound. No explanation. No goodbyes. In the weeks that followed, Whispers turned into questions. Why had Diddy pushed Big to attend that party? Why ignore every warning? Why leave the city so quickly afterward? Those who'd been there remembered his calmness, almost rehearsed. The way he avoided looking at the car after the shooting. The way he kept working, touring, releasing tributes within days. The music world mourned, but Puffy moved faster than grief could catch him. He appeared on every major network, the grieving friend, the survivor, the man who just wanted peace. Then, months later, he released I'll Be Missing You, a global hit. The tribute that turned tragedy into triumph. The money poured in. Awards followed. Bad Boy wasn't buried with Biggie, it was reborn. And for some, that was the most unsettling part. Behind closed doors, those who knew both men said it out loud, though never in front of cameras. Biggie was more than his artist, one insider said. He was the only one Puff couldn't control. Big was the star that could outshine him, the voice the people truly loved. And when a kingdom has two kings, history says only one survives. In the years that followed, investigators chased leads that vanished in smoke. Compton gangs, LA police, revenge for Tupac. Everyone had a theory. But the one that lingered, the one no one wanted to say out loud, pointed back toward the man who'd gained the most. The music world wept. Fans grieved. And yet, the empire marched on. Puffy was everywhere. TV screens, red carpets, award shows. The tears dried quickly. The parties returned. He had lost his best friend, or perhaps his final rival. It was December 27th, 1999, the last Christmas of the century, the end of an era, and for Bad Boy Records, the night when everything cracked open. The location, Club New York, Times Square. The crowd, power, fame, and money, in expensive suits and glittering dresses. And in the VIP section, surrounded by flashing cameras and envy, sat Sean Puffy Combs, his girlfriend Jennifer Lopez, and his new artist, Shine Barrow, a 21-year-old rapper from Belize who looked up to Diddy like a god. Shine wasn't just another artist. He was the chosen one. The new voice of Bad Boy, raw, loyal, eager to prove himself. Puffy called him family. That word again. But family, in Diddy's world, always came with a price. Around 2:30 a.m., an argument broke out near Puffy's table. A man named Matthew Scar Allen, a known hustler, allegedly threw money in Puffy's face, mocking him, daring him. In an instant, the atmosphere turned electric. Puffy, furious, reached for a bottle. Security moved in. Voices rose. And then the flash. Gunfire erupted. 3 shots. Screams. Glass shattered. People hit the floor as panic swallowed the room. When the smoke cleared, 3 people were injured. 1 woman shot in the face. The world outside never knew the real version of what happened in those seconds, only the aftermath. Chaos, sirens, and flashing police lights as Diddy and Jennifer Lopez were led away in handcuffs. Shine too. Only difference? He wasn't the one smiling for cameras. From the moment of their arrest, a story began to form. One carefully designed, rehearsed, and sculpted in the dark. Lawyers swarmed. Phones rang. Deals were whispered before anyone even saw a courtroom. And when the dust settled, one name carried the weight of it all: Shine. Police recovered a 9mm handgun from the scene. Ballistics were inconclusive. No one could say for sure whose weapon fired first. But the headlines didn't wait for proof. They branded Shine the shooter, the fall guy, a young artist protecting his boss, the man who made him a star. Behind the scenes, the message was clear: take the hit. Be the loyal soldier. We'll take care of you. And Shine, barely out of his teens, believed them. He stayed silent. He trusted the promise. Diddy's legal team, one of the best money could buy, built a defense that painted Puffy as the innocent celebrity caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. They called Shine reckless. They called him naive. The courtroom became a stage. Diddy performed. Jennifer Lopez was dismissed early, her name erased from the chaos. And when the verdicts came down, the crowd gasped. Puffy not guilty. Shine guilty. 10 years in prison. Just like that, loyalty had a sentence. But the price was blood. Not literal this time, but the blood of careers, trust, and lives left behind. Bodies number 3 and number 4, not in caskets, but in the silence of what was lost, Shine's youth, his freedom, his faith in the man he called brother. In the years that followed, the world moved on. Puffy, now P. Diddy, reinvented himself once again. Parties, awards, platinum records. His narrative was redemption, his brand, survival. Meanwhile, Shine sat behind concrete walls, 23 hours a day, a cell for a stage, his loyalty turning to bitterness. In interviews years later, his voice carried no anger, only revelation. "I took that case like a man," he said. "But I realized loyalty don't live in this world. Not in that world." He spoke of manipulation, how people around Puffy had coached him to stay quiet, to trust that he'd be rewarded for his silence. The promise of protection, money, brotherhood, all of it vanished the moment the cell door slammed. Diddy never visited, never wrote, never spoke his name again. The story didn't end with prison. Rumors swirled for years. Whispers of cover-ups, hush money, and the mysterious disappearance of key witnesses. One claimed they were offered money to remember differently. Another claimed evidence was switched. Nothing was proven, but the pattern was familiar. Every time the truth reached Diddy's door, it vanished into the shadows. The same shadows that had followed him since Uptown, since Bad Boy, since the beginning. By the time Shine was released in 2009, the world had changed. Diddy was a billionaire, a fashion mogul, a global icon. Shine was in exile, older, quieter, broken but still breathing. He looked into cameras with eyes that had seen the price of loyalty. "I was a boy then," he said. "Now I understand. I wasn't part of his family. I was part of his story." Those words echoed louder than any gunshot. The boy who once fought to climb out of Harlem's chaos had turned into the very thing he escaped, a man untouchable, unaccountable, and alone in his power. He had built an empire not from dreams, but from silence. Silence of artists. Silence of victims. Silence of friends who knew too much. And each time another name vanished, another soul discarded, his empire grew stronger. The music still played. The champagne still flowed. The lights still flashed. But somewhere, deep beneath the beats and the glory, something else pulsed, cold and unrelenting. To the world, he was untouchable, Sean Diddy Combs, the mogul, the lover, the man every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. But to those who knew him best, the women who lived inside his world, love was a game of control, and survival was the only prize. This is where the empire turned inward, where the spotlight dimmed and the darkness moved behind closed doors. Long before the lawsuits, before the headlines, there was Kim Porter, model, actress, mother, and the one woman who seemed to see through the smoke. Kim wasn't just another lover. She was the architect behind his image, the calm beneath his chaos. She gave him a home when the rest of the world gave him worship. She raised his children, stood beside him through scandals, and believed that somewhere beneath the greed, there was still a man worth saving. But the closer she got to him, the colder the air became. Friends remember the whispers, the nights she'd call crying, the arguments that rattled the walls, the bruises hidden beneath designer sleeves. Still, she stayed. Because love in Diddy's world wasn't romance. It was debt. Over the years, Kim tried to break free. More than once. Each time, she was pulled back in promises, apologies, diamonds. The cycle repeated, predictable as the sunrise. And then, in November 2018, everything stopped. Kim Porter was found dead in her Los Angeles home. Cause of death. Pneumonia, they said. But the whispers started almost immediately. She'd been working on a tell-all memoir, one that would finally reveal what life inside the empire really looked like. The cheating, the abuse, the secret rituals that blurred pleasure and control. She never finished the book. The coroner's report dragged on for months. Details went missing. The timeline didn't make sense. Her family demanded answers that never came. And Diddy's silence, that was the loudest part. He posted tributes online, called her the love of his life. But those who'd been there remembered something different. Distance. He didn't attend key memorial meetings. He avoided questions. He moved on quickly. Kim became body number 5, not a victim of gunfire or violence, but of exhaustion. Of knowing too much. Because in Diddy's world, even love had an expiration date. Years later, another woman would step into the light. Her name, Cassie. Young, beautiful, and naive enough to believe in fairy tales. When she met Diddy at 19, she was an aspiring singer. By 20, she was living in his mansion. To the public, they were the glamorous couple, music's royal pair. But behind the marble walls, a different story played out. Cassie became a shadow, controlled, monitored, shaped. Every move, every outfit, every thought passed through him. He chose her friends, her career, her silence. Years later, when she finally escaped, she revealed what those years had cost her. In her lawsuit, she described nights of humiliation and fear. She spoke of violence masked as intimacy, of being forced into acts she never consented to, of rituals, parties filled with strangers and power, filmed without permission. She said he used fear as language, money as handcuffs. And when she tried to leave, he used silence as a weapon. When the lawsuit hit the press, the world gasped. How could this man, the philanthropist, the businessman, the icon, also be a monster behind closed doors? But before the public could even digest it, before the lawyers could begin discovery, it ended. Diddy settled in 24 hours. No trial. No testimony. Just money. Silence bought in a single night. And the message was clear. Truth doesn't matter when you can afford to bury it. While the headlines fixated on Diddy's relationships, something else stirred beneath it. Another death, another whisper. Andre Harrell, Diddy's mentor, the man who had discovered him decades earlier, was found dead in 2020. Heart failure, they said. But those who knew the history saw irony or prophecy. Andre was the first man who taught Diddy how to build an empire and how to survive inside it. But by the end, Andre was pulling away. He had seen too much, perhaps said too much. In the months before his death, he'd been in talks for a docuseries, one that would trace the truth about Uptown Records, the deals, the ghosts, the connections that built Bad Boy. Then suddenly he was gone. No drama. No investigation. Just another obituary in a year filled with loss. Body number 6. Another mentor. Another silence.
Kim.
Cassie. Andre. 3 very different people, bound by one thing. They each got too close to the truth. In interviews, old friends of Diddy spoke carefully, their voices trembling, their eyes darting off camera. The women he loved, one said quietly, were the ones who knew too much. They described a pattern of control dressed as care, of wealth used as a leash. Behind every smile, a threat. Behind every promise, a clause. Some believed he was cursed. Others believed he was protected, untouchable. But the truth sat somewhere in between. The empire wasn't cursed. It was fed. Fed by silence, by fear, by loyalty that always ended in loss. In public, Diddy grieved beautifully, memorials, Instagram posts, charity events in Kim's name. Behind the lens, the mansion lights never dimmed. The parties continued. He was still the king. Still adored. But every mirror reflected something darker now. He had outlived the men who built him, the women who loved him, and the friends who warned him. And still he smiled, as if the ghosts didn't follow him from room to room. Because in the end, every story around him, every woman, every friend, every whisper, ended the same way. Silence. Sudden death.
Closed casket.
And behind that silence, one truth lingered like smoke in the air. The story began with ambition. A boy from Harlem, a dream, a record label, and a promise to never go back to the streets that raised him. But now, decades later, that same dream stands surrounded by shadows. 8 names. 8 lives. Each connected to him, some by music, some by blood, and some by something darker. First, Tupac Shakur. the poet of the people, gunned down under Vegas lights. His words still echo like prophecy. I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I'll spark the brain that will. And maybe he did. Maybe that spark ignited the fire that still burns the industry today. Second, the notorious B.I.G. The crown jewel of Bad Boy, gone 6 months later. His laughter, his voice, his legend, frozen in time. Every year, Puffy lights a candle for him, but the whispers never fade. Was he mourning his friend or his final rival? Third, Heavy D. The man who connected him to Andre Harrell, who opened the door to Uptown Records.
Gone suddenly.
Collapsed on the steps of his Los Angeles home. Cause: pulmonary embolism. But the timing uncanny. Just months after reconnecting with Diddy to discuss unfinished business. Fourth, Andre Harrell. The mentor. The father figure. The man who once built him, then tried to warn others about him. Heart failure, they said. No investigation. No closure. Only silence. Fifth, Kim Porter. The love of his life. Or the ghost that never left. A mother. A writer. A woman preparing to tell her truth. Gone before the words could leave her pen. Sixth, I'll be sure. Kim's former partner. Her first love. A man who publicly hinted that her death wasn't natural. Then suddenly he fell into a coma. Months gone. No clear explanation. When he finally woke, he could barely speak, but what he said was enough to chill anyone listening. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see. Seventh, Shakir Stewart. An executive at Def Jam.
Brilliant.
Respected. On the verge of exposing something about industry rituals. They said it was suicide. But those close to him remember the fear in his voice days before. He'd said, "They're watching me." Eighth, the unnamed.
The bodyguards.
The assistants. The quiet ones who disappeared without mention. The names erased, the files sealed, the stories forgotten. People who entered the orbit of greatness and never returned the same. For 30 years, Sean Combs has defied every law of gravity and consequence. Scandals came. Lawsuits followed. Allegations rose and vanished. Yet through it all, he stayed untouchable. Every decade, a reinvention. Every controversy, a comeback. It's as if the darker the accusations became, the brighter his spotlight grew. Was it strategy? Luck? Or something more sinister, something protected by power itself? In the quiet moments, behind the fame, behind the empire, the question echoes. Why him? How does one man survive every downfall, every betrayal, every death orbiting his name, and still emerge untouched? The deeper you look into the world he built, the more it feels less like music and more like mythology. An industry not of beats and bars, but of bargains. A place where careers are currency and souls are collateral. The stories line up too neatly, the disappearances too timed, the silence too thick. From private parties whispered about by insiders, nights that turned into rituals of excess and humiliation, to contracts signed in blood, metaphorical or otherwise, to the women who walked in full of promise and walked out broken or gone. The empire's foundation was never music. It was control. As the years passed, his empire expanded, liquor brands, clothing lines, television deals. Every time a scandal threatened to end him, money washed it away. But money can't bury ghosts.
Those who've been near him say he's changed.
The laughter doesn't sound the same. The parties end earlier. And sometimes, when the crowd fades, they say he talks to himself. Whispering names. Names like Kim,
Andre,
Biggie. The ones who never left. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's fear. Or maybe, deep down, he knows that power taken through pain comes with a debt, and one day, the bill arrives. In that reflection, the truth finally takes shape. Not a man who survived, but a man who consumed everything around him to stay alive. The parties, the headlines, the awards, all distractions from the ghosts whispering his name when the lights go out. The camera pulls back. The penthouse lights flicker. Photos of lost friends cover the walls. The heartbeat slows until it's barely there. Then, the screen fades to black. They called it Bad Boy Records, but maybe it was never about music. Maybe it was about survival. So tell me, when the last light goes out and the music stops, who do you think will be left standing? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one.